So I have some handouts here. These are just some notes, they're front and back. So if you will take one and you can just follow along. This will be an open book test at the end. I actually have a test.
You know my brain's fried by this time.
So we'll make this short and sweet and to the point. And if I can get these papers separated, that'd be good. There we go. And I'll come around the other side there and get some more. All right, y'all can kind of look it over. These are just some notes that I made a long time ago, and I've kind of added to over the years. So we'll go over it, and then we'll hit a test here at the end.
You really like saying that word, test.
Test. This is a test of the National Broadcast System. If it was a real emergency, you would be told where. Thank you. All right, very good. So, and if somebody else comes in, I've got a few more here. All right, so let's just talk about a few things. Where did Christmas come from? Why do we celebrate Christmas? Where does it come from? St. Nicholas. Christmas came from St. Nicholas. We associate it with the birth of Christ, obviously. That's what we celebrate. But Christmas didn't start until about the 4th century. Somewhere between 400 and 499, the Christmas concept as similar to what we know it started. So Christmas hasn't always been the same. And if you travel anywhere in the world, you know that Christmas is not celebrated the same. You know, where did the concept of a jolly a Santa Claus in a red suit with, you know, red nose and red cheeks coming down a chimney? Where did that come from? Yeah, it came from a guy named Clement Moore, and he wrote the story that you might know. Let me get my notes here. Let me see where it is. I was reading over it earlier. Clement Moore. Yeah, on the bottom under Santa Claus, on the last sentence there. In 1822, Clement C. Moore composed the famous poem, A Visit from St. Nick, which was later published as The Night Before Christmas. So we have our concept of Santa Claus from a poem that was originally written in 1822. Does that make sense? So, you know, so who was this original Saint Nick? Who was this original Saint Nick? You'll find it up.
I was thinking it was from
Yeah. Saint Nicholas on the first sentence of that same paragraph. Where was he born? Yeah. They've just excavated the town that he used to live in. They found a lot of things that are associated with him. So he was a saint. And what was he known for? Generosity. Generosity to the poor. And he later became known as the generosity to children as well. And he's the patron saint of several things. He's a patron saint of sailors, Greece, Russia, and also of children. Okay? And the Romans didn't like him. They tortured him. But then Constantine became Roman emperor, legalized Christianity as the official religion of the Roman Empire, and he was elevated, and he was at the Council of Nicaea. Now, that doesn't mean much to you, but the Council of Nicaea in 325 was where we got this from. They canonized the Bible. They took writings that didn't meet their criteria, and they put all Paul's letters and New Testament together along with the Old Testament and solidified the Bible. It took them about 100 years, and it finally culminated in 325 under Constantine and Council of Nicaea. And guess who was there? Santa Claus. St. Nicholas was there. Why do we call him Santa Claus? It come from the Dutch. The Dutch Sinterklaas, and then it shortened to Sinterklaas, and then it finally got English got a hold of it, and that's where we get Santa Claus. So it came from the Dutch. The Dutch did this. Now, some of these things are questioned in history. So these are just some of the ones that I thought were pretty solid. Not all of them can be proven beyond a shadow of doubt. What about this little thing that we hang on our Christmas tree or we put around the house? It looks like a little shepherd's crook, and it's red and white and striped. What is that called? Candy cane. Where'd that come from? Come from where? A barber. From a barber pole. Yeah. Close, but not quite. It came from Indiana. A candy maker in Indiana decided he wanted something to celebrate Christmas, to point to the birth of Christ. So it's in the shape of a shepherd's crook because Jesus is the chief shepherd, the great shepherd. It's red and white representing his blood, and there's lots of other symbols in there. This is not in your notes, but where do we get, you know that little thing that got blown around this a couple days ago out in the yard? What do you call that? Nativity scene. Where do we get that nativity scene from? Where we have the stable and the animals and the star and the wise men.
I don't know who started it, but the figures come from right straight out of
Right. Figures are from the Bible. It's a conflation of Matthew and Luke's account, yes. St. Francis of Assisi is where it comes from. St. Francis of Assisi got very upset because nobody understood the Bible. So very few people could read at that time. So he got what they call a minstrel show, and he traveled from village to village. He would set up in the main square, and guess what he would set up? The manger scene, so he could tell the story of the Christmas story over and over again and use the props of the nativity scene. So it's a conflation of the wise men and all that. The wise men were not at the birth of Christ. They were there probably a year after, because it says that they came to Bethlehem and they were living in a house in Matthew's account. Well, we all know that Jesus was born where? In a stable, and placed in a manger. Yeah. And there's a lot. And that's where the animals come from, because it was a stable, and the common animals that were relative to people of Bethlehem of that first century. Yeah, some different things. A lot of different things here. So, what are some other things we need to know? You have any questions about Christmas? I don't know if I'll know the answer or not, but Daniel probably does.
No pressure, Dan.
What are these things called right here?
Poinsettias originated in Mexico.
Mexico. How did a Mexican plant get all up in Christmas's business? A guy named Poinsett he went to, I think he was an ambassador from the United States. I believe that's correct. It's in the bottom of the first page there. He saw this plant and he says, man, that'd be cool for Christmas because of the bright red leaves. The leaves are not the flower. The red leaves are the leaves, not the flower. The flower's in the center. And it's only red for a short period of time. So it's kind of interesting. So we get it. It's named after him. He sent it back to the States, and next thing you know, everybody's got to have this poinsettias.
And I believe North Carolina was first or second in production.
Yes, because they're not easy to grow.
No,
They have to really be careful how they grow. When was Jesus born? In the spring. Most scholars do believe that. Why? Because Passover is in the spring, and the sheep that were in the fields at Bethlehem were a special sheep that fed the temple sacrifice, the day and the morning and the evening sacrifice, and they were only in the fields of Bethlehem in the spring for Passover. So almost for certain that he was probably born in the spring era, March, April time frame, maybe May.
Another thing I've heard too, the reason why they moved it to winter was because in the spring there were lots of pagan rituals and celebrations that went on close to the time he was born. And the early fathers
Yeah.
did not want his birth associated with any of the pagan issues
Yeah,
that went on.
it's actually reversed. There was pagan rituals at the winter solstice in December that the Pope said, I want to have something to compete with it. So we moved the celebration to December 25th. That's how it got moved from the original time to December 25th. Does that make sense? To compete with the pagan festivals of the winter solstice, which were, common. There were other reasons too, but that was the main reason. So he was born in the spring. What year?
BC 6, I think it was.
BC 6. Why is it BC? Why? Who messed that up? Well, we owe an early church father messed that up. He got his math wrong, and that's why we're on the Gregorian calendar. It's 6 years off from the actual. From 0 is not the birth of Christ. -6 is. But anyway, so the issue is we're pretty sure, we know he had to have been born at least 4 BC because Herod, the king, died in 4 BC, and we know that's a hard date. We know that. So with the 2 years that Herod used for the kids, somewhere between 6 and 4 BC, Jesus was born in that range. Maybe 5, maybe you don't know. And then anyway, so there we go. What about this Xmas? Xmas. You ever heard of somebody write it on a sign that says Xmas? And what do you think about that?
I think it's sad because it takes Christ out of the word.
Yes. Most people believe that it's take Christ out of Christmas, because X, we X out things that we want to throw away, yeah. But really that's not what happened. When we started finding manuscripts, and paper was super expensive, they didn't have paper like this, okay? They had paper that had to be handmade, and it was very expensive. So the scribes started finding shortcuts, and they would I can't remember the exact letters, but you ever seen like in a museum and they show Christ and they have these capital letters at the bottom, I-N, so I can't remember the letters. Well, where'd that come from? Well, that's an abbreviation of Christ's name in Greek, and what does Christ's name begin with? Christ, Chi,
Which is an
X.
in the Greek.
So it started when they started doing X for Christ to save paper so they could put more on one sheet of paper when they would transcribe manuscripts. And then it became later Xmas. So Xmas really has nothing to do with throwing Christ out. It's the symbol for Christ. Most people would know that because most people don't study biblical Greek, which is different from... so anyway, that's just a little thing. 12 days of Christmas. We sing this song, right? And what was day 5? 5 golden rings. Where'd that 12 days come from?
To help tell the story too, wasn't it? There were some symbolisms in there. With
Yeah, the song does have some symbolism. But where did the 12 come from?
12 tribes. Cycle.
It's in the early church, they started celebrating, they used to celebrate Christmas on January 6th. It was called Three Kings Day. It was called something else. What was it? The Epiphany. The Epiphany, the appearing, which is a Greek word. And so between December 25th and January 6th, how many days? 12 days. So to compromise, they stretched it out, and they used this 12 days of Christmas as a way to not violate the eastern and the western half of the early church, the Rome and Constantinople in that time, two different. They had split after Constantine, so forth, so on. So it comes from and most Eastern churches still celebrate January 6th as Christmas. Does that make sense? About this thing of mistletoe and holly. Do you think Christmas was ever outlawed in the United States? Was Christmas ever outlawed in the colonies? Let me be more specific. Massachusetts outlawed it because they thought Christmas, because of it was on December 25th, because of some of the rituals that were done at the time. The colonists said, that's too close to paganism. We're not going to, and it's all on the dates all wrong anyway. Does that make sense? So it was actually outlawed in Massachusetts. Yeah, I mean, a lot of, you know, so I guess they were liberal all the way back then. I don't know. I don't know. If you've ever lived, I lived in Massachusetts, so I can say that, yeah. Anyway, what about this thing called mistletoe and holly?
It's a parasite in trees and
Yeah,
kills them. We've had
it kills trees, yeah. It's a tree killer. Well, part of the outlawing in Massachusetts was because of mistletoe, because mistletoe is directly related to the Scandinavian pagan love goddess. And that's where kissing under the mistletoe comes from. So it's associated with that. Okay. But so the Pope said, no, we can't use this mistletoe business. What are we going to use? Holly. That's where holly comes from. And the red berries fit right in. Yeah. And where did this Christmas tree business come from? I know a lot of Christians that will not put a Christmas tree up because of the verse in Isaiah. You know, don't use a tree and don't worship a tree and all this other stuff. Where did that Christmas tree come from? Who developed the concept of a Christmas tree? Who was it? Germany. Martin Luther, the reformist. Martin Luther in the 1500s wanted the same thing as St. Francis of Assisi. He wanted to have a symbol for Christmas, and he used the evergreen tree. Why? For everlasting life. He used candles as the light of the world, and you know the problem was it caught a lot of houses on fire, so there was a problem there. So they had to adapt, improvise, and they had to overcome. And so Martin Luther is responsible for what we know as the Christmas tree, and it took a long time for the Christmas tree concept to take root in America. And even in England, it wasn't picked up right away. It was more of a German thing. So, what else we have? Hey, that might be a test question. You might want to remember that one.
Where did the reindeer get started?
From that poem. Because Santa on his reindeer landed on the roof. You hear came down the chimney. Yep. Came from that poem. A lot of that. And then it's been obviously commercialized since then. I think I covered most of them. Maybe not. It's an open book test. So. And we do the Advent reading. Where did the concept of Advent come from? The word Advent, what does it mean? Coming. Okay. So it's the first coming of Christ, the Advent season. And we talk about first Advent, second Advent was his coming again. Okay. And it started from a Latin word, and then it was picked up by the church in symbolism year after year. And then we have Advent Sunday. And there's different, Eastern does it different than the Western, which is a lot of issues there. But anyway, that's where the Advent comes from. All right, it looks like I got it. All right, let me hand you the test. All right, question number 1. When was Christmas first celebrated? On December 25th. And around the 4th century. Okay. Number 2, where did Christmas tree tradition originate? Germany. Martin Luther was definitely a German. Where do the red doors of the church come from? From Germany. Because when he nailed his 95 points of theses, guess what they were? Red doors. Number 3, why was December 25th chosen to be Christmas Day? Yeah, to compete with the pagan tradition of the winter solstice. How did the tradition of kissing under the mistletoe develop? Scandinavian love goddess. That's one reason the Massachusetts colonists said, nah. I mean, there was a lot of little things going on at that time. No, I thought it was something about your mouth being puckered up, but I don't know. That's something. I wasn't sure. What significance is holly in celebrating Christmas?
It replaced mistletoe.
It was a substitute for mistletoe that did not have the pagan holiday attached to it. What country did poinsettias originate from? Mexico. Mexico. Yeah, good. Who probably was the first man to illustrate illuminate a Christmas tree with candles? Martin Luther. Not Martin Luther King, but Martin Luther. Celebrating Christmas was once against the law in Massachusetts. A bunch of Scrooges in there. I don't know. St. Nicholas was born in what country? Turkey. And the candy cane legend says that it originated with a candy maker from where? In Indiana, Midwest. There you go. 100%. Good memory.
Oh, did y'all didn't flip over the page? Oh, no.
You know, there's one in every crowd.
Well, 50% is still a good score.